alternate fingerings. There are some editorialized fingerings in here that I kind of disagree with. You can use them if you want. If they work, fine, but I find that there are easier ways to teach, especially students that are not quite as advanced tend to do better. And I also like to think beyond just the middle school level. You know, I want to think about where my students are going in 4 years and in 5 years, you know, not just where they are right now to get them through this concert. I want to be able to teach them the technique that's going to have them flourish in high school. You know, I want them to be able to play more challenging music, and that's going to require different technique. And so maybe if they're not used to things like playing in even positions, maybe it's going to be challenging at first and take a little bit of extra practice, but then in the long run, you know, if they play something like Beethoven or Brahms or, you know, composers where they tend to write things in keys that use a lot of even positions, it's going to pay off later on. I'm going to go through this kind of quickly, but if you need like a sheet of all the fingering suggestions that I have, like I can send you some like errata for a lullaby. Just send me an email at teachingorchestra@gmail.com. All right, so we're just going to get into this here at measure 12. In the cello part, they have the G sharp as second finger and the A is third finger. I like second position better for this, and so I would change this to third finger here and fourth finger here. And then, of course, you know, they play the open G, open D, and then, you know, fourth finger here in first position. That's all fine. All right, let's talk about half position. Here in measure 43, we've got some half position work in the cello section. And they have you playing this B flat like sort of as a backwards extension. I don't like that. I like to have them stay in half position the whole time. So the thumb is really important, well, on all the instruments, but particularly the cello, like where is your thumb going to be? And when you're in half position, your thumb needs to be aligned with where the B natural would be. And that B natural would be second finger, right? B flat, first finger. So then what would this F natural be? Well, not second finger, it's going to be third finger. Then open D. And then we have this B flat on the G string, and that's also going to be third finger. Third finger. We've got the open D here, third finger, and then 1. And that way we're in half position the whole time. Then when we have to come down to this F natural here, you're going to have to go back to first position and reach up to grab that fourth finger. Also, make sure that when your cellists are doing that, and that's a spot where there can be a lot of intonation problems, it's a big jump, and they're crossing strings too, but you need to make sure that they rotate the shoulder around so that they can really get onto the D string. Otherwise, if they're kind of like stretching around, they're already having to shift a little bit up from half position back to first position to get the F. So, you know, just make sure they're rotating the shoulders too, and then get a lot of finger pressure. All right, so here in measure 53, again, you know, third position's awesome, but you know, I like to have my students play in second position instead. So it's going to be fourth finger for the E, and then, you know, they shift back down. It's just a smaller shift. There's really no reason to shift up to third and then back down. Okay, measure 75, we have some more half position stuff, and it's not indicated that way at all. So again, we're going to need to change some fingerings here. This is going to be third finger, and then open D, and then this B flat again. Third finger, not second finger, third finger. So this will be fourth finger. They can think of it like an augmented pattern here, where they have that extension with the second finger, which means they will need to slide their thumb up to where the C is on the A string in order to do this. And then this will be third finger again. This C natural will be third finger because it's a whole step from C to B flat. So this is all in half position. And then again, we've got this B flat to this F on the C string, and that's going to require a lot of shoulder rotation so that we can play this in tune. A lot of cello sections will play this note out of tune. But yeah, this is going to be fourth finger, go back to first position for this. because there's no B flats. I think the editor or whoever put in the fingerings for this is like anti-open E, because there's a lot of places where we could play open E to make for an easier shift, and there's just some stuff where it's like, well, it's practical to play open E. So my rule for open strings that I give my students generally is that unless it's a long note, if they're crossing strings just to play on an open string, I don't let them do that. But if it's successive motion, like they play an open string and then there's more notes on that string, that's fine. And the E string's included in that. And so there's a lot of places in here where they can play open E. And I know some directors are like anti-open E, like never open E, never. But, what if your violins want to play Bach one day? What if they want to do that? They're going to have to learn how to play open E, and they're going to have to need to make open E sound good. So maybe teach them how to do that. So right here in measure 22, this is one of the spots where we start off in third position here, playing this line, and then we play, and then right here is when I have them play the open E to shift back down to first position here. The composer would have you shift down on this C sharp, and I think it's better to use this open string to shift. Gives you a little bit more time to shift with the left hand, and just makes for a cleaner shift. And it's just an eighth note, all right? You're going to be able to make an eighth note sound good. It's descending stepwise motion, you'll be fine. If you look at measure 28, that's the way it's fingered here. We're in third position here, and then they use the open A to shift for the third finger D. I guess it's because, open A is fine, but open E is not fine because we hate open E. But, open E is fine too. In season 1, episode 5, I do an entire episode on the E string. The E string is tough to make sound good, and I get why a lot of directors don't have their students play open E, but the open E does provide accountability to the E string, because if they can make their open E sound good, they can make the rest of their E string notes sound good as well. And there's a lot of material on the E string and lullaby. So it'd be good to make sure that they're using the right technique on the E string, involving good bow path, understanding how much weight you should use on the E string. So season 1, episode 5, highly recommend it if you need some tips on the E string. 30, 31, these E's are marked fourth fingers. I mean, really? They can't play open E there. They're eighth notes. Come on, it's stepwise motion. What's the problem with that? What did open E ever do to you? Here in measure 69, this is written in fifth position, and there's really no reason to be in fifth position here unless your students don't know fourth position. And then, yeah, that would be a pretty good reason. So instead of first finger here, this should be second finger. And then 3, 4. And it's going to be, the C sharp to D is going to be the half step, so it's going to be a major pattern, which your students are going to like, instead of an augmented pattern. So you're probably going to get more consistent tuning here anyway. And then shift back to third here. Fourth position is pretty essential for a lot of stuff like Beethoven and Brahms. So I think it's important to teach your violins how to play in fourth position. And I guess the moral of the story for this video is that Beethoven, Brahms, Bach, if you want to play a composer whose surname starts with a B, you're going to have different technique than the editorial markings here in Lullaby. I think the other thing that we have to consider here is that this piece was published in 1984, and if you think about student instruments from now to 1984, they've come a long way. What you can get now for $1,000 versus what you could have gotten back then is just incredible, if you're shopping at the right place anyway. And even with inflation, like it's just amazing at how good some of these student-level instruments are getting. That's not to say that there isn't still a lot of junk on the market. In fact, there's plenty of junk. Most of the market is a race to the bottom. But if you find a good shop that sources quality instruments, your money can go a long way. Okay, now here in 93, you have to go into fifth position. You can't do this in fourth position. Why not? Well, because there's an F sharp here. If you try to do this in fourth and then extend for this F sharp, number one, it's a whole step, so that's quite an extension. Number two, it's a half note, and you're probably going to want to vibrate, and if your pinky's extended, it's just not the best technique for this. So this does have to be in fifth position, but the rest of it can be in fourth. In the next video, I'm going to talk about common problems. I've already talked about a lot of problems in these other videos that your students can have, but most of them are more general. This one was kind of specific with the fingerings, but I'm going to talk about problems that I hear. Lullaby has been around for a long time. A lot of groups play it. It's a favorite among a lot of orchestra teachers. I'm just going to give you my experience as a contest judge and having heard many orchestras play Lullaby and kind of the problems that I hear and maybe some ways to fix those. So I hope to see you in the next video.